Earth. And it has all different kinds of colors. If you look at the next slide, you see that the planet has all different kinds of colors, browns and blues and greens. This is the sign of a living world. But when you switch to night, that's the next slide, please, you begin to look at the fact that this planet has a civilization upon it of humans. And not only is it extending to the Americas, but on the next slide, you can see how we are spread across the entire globe. Now, in the ships of the Galactic Federation of Light, which is the group that is coming to help us, what we have to understand is that all these ships, these advanced technologies, are here not only to observe us and to help us in this shift, but to come down and be a part of a vast new reality. So let's look at the ships so that we can better understand what is happening. Now, the first ship is the one that's dearest to my heart. This is the Syrian ship. Now, the one you see here in its orange colors is the Syrian scout ship that I was on a lot of times. It's about 100 feet in diameter, and it is wonderful to be on. It has 3 levels, and what happens to the ship when it takes off is you really don't feel it. But for me, most of the time when I was on this ship, I was on the bottom level in the storage devices, the storage pods, etc. So I didn't get to see only once in a while the ship when it actually operated. Now, beside the Syrians, which I'm the most familiar with, there are other groups. Now, the next slide shows the Arcturian scout ship. Now, this has the traditional lenticular shape, which many of you may have seen when you see lenticular clouds moving across the sky. Now, this is what it actually looks like when the ship is uncloaked. And you'll notice the almost lens-like design of the bottom of the ship, and at the top, this wonderful lens-like bump, which is where the crew's quarters are. And this particular picture that you're looking at right now is one that was taken by a person in Arizona a couple of years ago. And you can see gliding across the desert floor. Now, the Arcturians are the healers. So the Syrians are mostly the diplomats and the people in charge of designing the planning for the first contact mission. The Arcturians are primarily designed in the process of healing, which is the great shift we're all going through, which we're going to be talking about shortly, and our role in what happens to us in it. And so the Arcturians, which are a race of slender, beautiful-looking, horse-like people, are the people that are in charge of most of the medical teams. And one of the great things that I got to do was to meet one of them, which is our friend Miss Supa, as we like to call her. And she came in these kind of ships, and she used to all the time use them. And there's other ships which we'll be talking about also. So let's go to the next slide. Now, the next slide shows you an Orion scout ship. This one is from the Mintaka group in the so-called Belt of Orion. And it's bringing a beam down. Now, these ships were originally on the other side. They were part of another group that no longer exists. And the important point is not to remember the name of the group. The important point is to remember that they are now part of the Galactic Federation, so I'm really not going to get into that. And what these ships are now doing is being modified so they can more easily exemplify the energies of light that are a part of the whole process of bringing the Galactic Federation and its first contact mission to us. Now, the next one was taken in Belgium quite a while ago. This is the famous Belgian triangles. And this gives you an example of looking at one in color up close. This was taken by a camera and a telephoto lens, and the guy who took it has released it so that you can see this. And I have 2 photos. Now, the first one, you can actually see how the ship looks. You can see the bright lights, and the lights are so bright that they have this red-like, orange-like glow around them. That's the energy being emitted. And in the middle is the actual power device. Now, the difference between this ship and the Federation triangle is the top. where you can see that the triangle isn't quite all there. And these are ships that used to be on the dark side but are now being used as part of the Federation fleet. And another angle of it can be seen in the next picture. And it's basically the same ship. So let's look at what the Federation is doing. In other words, what is it, when we talk about first contact, what is happening? So now, let's look at that. The first contact scenario consists of 5 basic points. The first part is simply the announcement of the Galactic Federation by new governments, because before the Federation shows up officially, a number of governments which have been causing a lot of problems on this planet will be gone. And they are the main ones that are involved in this particular ability of planet Earth to make pretend that ships from other worlds do not exist. So once that is done, and this UFO cover-up, as it's called by many, including myself, is done, then they will be announced, their benevolence will be explained, and they can finally come forward and begin to talk to us. This will be the first part of the first contact mission, and its final massive, you might say, formal bringing out or coming out party. Now the second part of that coming out party is global telecasts on first contact, in which they will explain what they're doing and about our future and how we are going to go from where we are right now in limited consciousness to being in full consciousness. The third part, after these first 2 are completed, will be the start of an education procedure, namely different education projects for different parts of the globe, and that will be beginning for us to better understand what this thing, full consciousness, is all about and what the Galactic Federation is about. The final part will be the mass landings, and the last part will be the formal disclosing of the time frame between the time they arrive and the time we actually begin our final metamorphosis into fully conscious beings, either in inner Earth or on the ships. Now the next thing I'm going to show you, the next slide, is called the stages of the first contact operation. Now in these stages, which we'll also be getting on in a timeline when we get to that part, but this is a good overview so you know what's coming. First of all, devices will be installed in our home and office that will use Galactic Federation technology. This will finally free us from the problems with energy, the problems with food, farming, and all kinds of things that we have material. The second thing will be introducing magnetic lifter technology. That gets rid of aircraft, and it also allows us to move pretty instantaneously from one part of the globe to another. The next part will be visits to motherships to explain exactly how these technologies operate and begin to introduce the timetables to us. And the final part will be the start of a whole series of intensive education and training projects on our true Earth history, and as I said, on what consciousness and especially what full consciousness is. So let's look at this in a little greater detail with our next slide. When you prepare for first contact, as the first bullet says, it's a raising of your awareness of spirit and a leading you to question the many accepted truths of your society. For most of our history, those in power have actually used history, as Herodotus said, the victor's right to history. What has happened to us is that we have had a history installed into our consciousness that is for the powerful to remain the powerful, and not for us to suddenly get upset and do things that would upset the apple cart, so to speak. The next thing to prepare us for first contact is to know that first contact is more than the arrival of a vast fleet. It is about the ending of our perceptions of ourselves and the start of a new paradigm about who we really are. In other words, we are going to discover our great and incredible full potential. And finally, first contact is a portent that we are shifting into something truly glorious. So this is what we're going to be talking about next. But let's finish up this section first. So next slide, please. This process of change that we've been talking about requires that we take bold measures and educate our communities about first contact. one of the first roles that all of us are going to be asked that are involved in understanding first contact and in being those people who have for long periods of time understood what this is to educate people on why we are being in the midst of a first contact and why we are going through so many incredible changes. The second thing is that we need to understand how many changes relate to that of Mother Earth, the Sun, and the entire solar system. This is not just a change of ourselves, it is a change of our entire reality. And that's something that we also have to understand as we prepare for first contact. And this is something that we've talked about before in a lot of my previous lectures. This change is likewise affecting our collective perception on how this reality operates. In other words, seeing this reality not as something that is unchangeable, but seeing it as something that our consciousness, our collective beliefs can alter, and alter in a vast way, from being something that is limited and a struggle to something that is abundant and a joy. Now, let's look at what is happening. Now, the first thing we're talking about is working with a consciousness shift. Now, in doing this, we realize that we are moving from an old chakra system, which you see on my left, and as you look at the screen, it's on your left, to what's on the right. Now, on the right is the new 13 chakra system. On the left is the old system, which was a system and basically we had been shut down to a certain level. The other one is when we're expanding. And this is what the shift is about. Our moving from a limited mode to an expanded full potential aspect of ourselves. So when we're working with the consciousness shift, the first thing we have to understand, next slide please, is that you are quickly shifting from this 7 to a 13 chakra energy system. This is reconnecting parts of your body that were either dormant or largely underused. It's estimated that there are over 200 minor energy systems in our body. These are all going to be connected together, which will bring into its full use many systems that were combined together to create the 7 system that will now become the 13 chakra system. An example of this shifting is this new chakra system developing in our head, which we'll talk to in a minute. Now, as you shift in both your head and in your body, you will discover that part of this process leads to aches, pains, fatigue, blurry vision, headaches, and even occasional heart pains or palpitations. So let's look at the head chakra. Now, if you look at the head chakra, you begin to see that there's 2 triangles involved in this. The first one is the triangle that connects to source and brings the energies down. These are the universal male and female, and then the head chakra, and then the system that takes that and allows that energy to be spread throughout the physical body. And that is, of course, done by 9 and 10, which are the other 2, the pineal, the pituitary, and also the well of dreams at the base of the head, which deals with the internal soul vision. So the head then becomes a control center for the entire body and brings the energy in. Now, this energy is not only being brought into the head, but into the RNA DNA. So next one, please. Now, healers need to understand these changes when working with patients. So understand that the body is changing and shifting. Understand that people are going through a lot of pain. And understand that a lot of this pain is not just what you may have learned before, but is part of a massive integrated system to allow all of us to shift. Now, beside our physical shift, which is integrating our mental and emotional and spiritual energies with our physical energies, time likewise is speeding up as the number of daily magnetic and electrical shifts of our reality grid. So, what is happening? If you were to look at the day, it seems like there's still 24 hours, 60 minutes, and 60 seconds, etc. What's really happening is, just as you approach the speed of light and everything seems the same, the world around you is actually going by faster. So the same thing is happening to us. We are going through a quantum time shift. And this quantum time shift is speeding up our days, which is why many of you may see or feel that you can't do enough in a day. Well, that's true. There's not as much time in the day. Now, these changes are really a tool. So use them wisely to guide humanity through her coming transitional stages. By that I simply mean, as healers, as psychics, as people who hold energies, as people who understand and use rituals, use all of this to help focus this energy so that all the people involved in these shifts can be able to complete these shifts as easily and as wonderfully as possible. In other words, if there's pains, help them to relieve it, and look at the reasons why these pains, etc., are happening. Now, not only is this happening in the head, moving through the body, but likewise, it's also happening in your RNA DNA. So if we look at the next slide, you see what is called the 3-strand RNA DNA on your right, and the traditional one on your left. Now the one on the right, the red line there, has always been there. But originally it was thought to be a non-connected remnant of our evolutionary past. Instead, it's a remnant of our full conscious past. It's something entirely different. And so this red line now is actually, as you see in the diagram on the right, is reconnecting to all the different aspects of the RNA DNA. And the result is that we are now connecting ourselves into a expanded genetic structure. Now this expanded genetic structure is also working with the scalar wave patterns in the head to move the body into its new reality. And that's what we have to understand, is we are transitioning to a new reality. Now, next slide. As we go through this transition, there's a need for community projects that express our joy and educate others to what is happening. The most important thing for us, and it doesn't matter the size. Size is not important here. What is important is the energy. So just remember that. The energy is the key. So when you do that, express your joy in whatever it is that your talents and your abilities want, and use that medium to educate others to what is happening, about contact, about our consciousness shift. There's also a need for resources, meetings, communications, and technology centers that can explain the new reality to the public. This is one of the things that PAO wants to do, planetary activation, but we also ask everybody else to go out there and use your abilities to create resources and meeting communication places and technology centers so that people can understand the shift to the new reality. There is a need also for a new media that can uncover and disclose what is really happening on Mother Earth. The news that most of us hear on television and radio, I hate to say this, but it's not really news to speak, beside the usual disasters and problems that you hear about all the time in all the newspapers. What we really need, most importantly, is for us to understand what's happening. So all the people out there that are doing internet research and are putting out there, continue to do so and connect. The key point is networking and connecting on all different levels. It's very important for us to understand that, because one of our most important roles as a vanguard for first contact is to understand and disclose and communicate with one another. That really helps the shift process, and then the healers and those involved in the medical and healing arts to help us through the various aspects of the shift. And so in that way, we can understand better what is happening. Now, to give you an idea what I want to do as a prototype, let's look at the next slide. Now here you can see what we like to call our Galactic Adventure Centers and their relationships to PAGs. At the top is the main PAG, which I hear called the Mother GAC or GAC, but even though I don't like the word, it sounds like a duck. Gak, gak. So all the GACs, the Galactic Adventure Centers, are related to all the PAGs, or our planetary activation groups. And so their purposes are threefold. First, to explain to the community about first contact. Second, to use their joys and talents to communicate to people about the shifts and changes going on in ourselves. And third, environmentally, to explain to people about what's going on in planet Earth and the need for a true guardianship. So this is a prototype, and this is what I am hoping very soon to be able to start establishing. Now, let's look at, since we're talking about Earth guardianship, let's look at the Earth and see what's going on with it, so we can have a better idea of what's happening. Now, in this next slide, you see about Earth's firmaments. Now, the firmaments originally were two levels, so this is usually called a two-firmament planet. And in the bottom firmament, which was 15 to 18,000 feet up, was a very thin, like 2/4 thickness pieces all together as one huge sheet of ice. And this ice sheet ran entirely around the planet, and the only openings were at the North and the South Pole. And then above that level, almost like double the distance up, because now you're at 36 to 38 to 35 to 38,000 feet, is the second level, which was connected in the same way. Now, the reasons why these things hung up in there is that there's a natural resonance pattern set up in the ice. And this acts almost as like an anti-gravity magnetic resonator, and that allows it to stay up. Now, in order to make sure the resonance stays in the right frequencies, so there isn't any occasional falling of part of the firmament down where it has to be repaired, during the time of Atlantis and Lemuria, special crystal temples were built, set to those proper frequencies, and they constantly radiated upwards at important energy nodes to these two firmaments so that they would then be allowed to maintain themselves at a maximum capabilities. And when they fell, as was to be expected, with the change in resonance patterns, the first or lower pattern fell first, and then the upper level fell second. The first level was the so-called Atlantis flood, and the second one was the so-called biblical or great flood. And this opened up our atmosphere to where it is today. It's kind of like a crude, open atmosphere. It would be like if you were in an air-conditioned house and all of a sudden everybody broke all the windows. The air conditioning doesn't work very well anymore, and in fact it will overwork and be gone very quickly, and then you'll be at full mercy to the weather. And that's what happened to us. Weather happened. Now, this system is now being reestablished. Very long ago, when I was still in Hawaii, it seems that way to me now anyway, I first heard about in 1999 and 2000 to 2001 about NASA studies of how there were hooks in the atmosphere at these two different levels. These are the beginnings, the first physical evidence of these two firmaments. And of course the rest of it will immediately rise up, because these resonators are like seeds. They're just like seeds you would see in many plants where all of a sudden you set one up and everything just is attracted to it. They're like attractors, and at the right moment the frequency will be set up at the right level and the firmaments will rise up out of the waters. That'll make anything that happened in the movie seem like nothing, I guess. So anyway, let's look more at how the new reality is being transitioned. The first thing that has to be done is to understand that the present two-pole system is being changed. It's changing to a monopolar system, which we'll talk about soon. Another thing that is happening with Mother Earth is that the things are beginning in both the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans for the rising of the continent of Atlantis in the Atlantic and the continent of Lemuria in the Pacific. one of the things that people are probably noticing is a lot of strange and unusual earthquakes. This is from the tectonic plates locking and unlocking and trying to lock again as a presage to the process of rising up of these two large continents. Now, something else that is happening is that the former moon system, the two-moon system, is coming forward. And by that I mean NASA has discovered that there are strange little particulates in the orbit of the moon which indicate that there are places where the possibilities for two other moons exist. Now, the present moon is to be moved back to where it originally came from, which is the outer moon of what will soon be the reconstituted planet of what they like to call Bellona, or which is the goddess of war, because it'll be right next to Mars. And also, to those who wonder, what does that mean? Some people like to call it Marduk, but I prefer to call it Bellona because that's what the Federation wants it to be known as. Maldek, yes. I call it Maldek, excuse me. So anyway, I haven't used the name so long I forgot it. So anyway, let's look at the two-pole system and see how it's changing. Now, the Earth is really hollow, and we'll be talking about that shortly. As you can see by the chart that you now see before you, the South Pole is migrating, and this is one of the things that geophysicists in the South Pole area in Antarctica have been discovering, is that the South Pole, for some strange reason, is migrating inside, inward, and northward. The other thing that they have been noticing is that the northern polar region is spreading itself farther and farther south. Many people think that this might be the beginnings of a pole shift. But what I would like to put forward, and what the Federation, the Galactic Federation, has told me, is that this is actually the start of moving Earth into becoming a true monopolar planet, and that is in which the South Pole is on the inside and the North Pole covers the entire outside. Now let's look at inner Earth so that you understand it, and then we'll talk about our roles in the present time with inner Earth and with the whole first contact process. Now, the Earth is actually hollow. It has a huge section at each pole, about 800 miles, which is the hole. The whole section then is very, very large and represents the rest of the full 8,000 miles across of the Earth, with only 400 miles at each side being the actual crust and surface. And as you look here, you can see the surface area is actually wound up around that as one system. So actually, if you look at the surface of the Earth, it really continues on the inside. As a matter of fact, if you look on the right in this diagram, you'll see that what I'm talking about. Basically, the Earth on the outside and the Earth on the inside are the same. Continents, oceans, mountains, rivers, streams are there. Now, the only difference is that in the 400 miles between the outer shell and the inner shell, so to speak, of the Earth, there is a series of caverns or natural holes or large, well, I just call them caverns because that's really what they are. Cavern worlds is what we call them. And this is where a large amount of so-called crystal cities are located. Telos, example near Mount Shasta, is one of these. So this is actually what is happening on here. We have this inner Earth glowing, the inner core, and that's how the daylight is. So the inner Earth is always in daylight, a very strange daylight. It's kind of like a smoky covered flame on the inside. So it's not as harsh as on the outside from the sun, but it's still very, very bright. It's like a very bright Klieg light that's been covered by cloth that's transparent. And that's why a lot of people call it the smoky sun or whatever in the inner Earth. Now let's look at some more of what our role is in this transition. The first thing is, as I was explaining, all of us need to hold the energy for this reality shift. Think of yourselves as being the grid nodal points for this shift. Every human being on this planet contains a vast amount of energy that they are holding. if we take this energy and anchor it into the earth, the core of our reality, and into our source, we then bring all the energies down around us. And then we can focus them. We become like a little crystal. Think of ourselves as 6 billion plus little crystals. What we are to do, what they would really love us to do, is to take this energy and focus it and anchor it in so that it comes in as these waves of energy come in, they're spread across the planet. Just look at it like a wave, and you're kind of like the wave shaper. And the wave comes in and you smooth it out and send it to everybody, and it just moves around the planet. And you see these waves of energy moving around the planet. So this is one of the things that they would really like us to do, encourage. Another thing is to be aware that you are shifting. By that I mean it's like you're a radio. You're constantly having a whole series of frequencies changing within you. So one of the things you need to do is to stay centered. That's why it's so important to stay centered. When you get off of focus, when you get off of being centered, what happens then is you cause a great deal of confusion because there's a lot of energy. All these frequencies are all incredible amounts of energy, and it can cause mass confusion. So one of the things you have to do is to stay centered and then use your inner energies to aid this procedure of change. So constantly see yourself as this radio that needs to be tuned, and constantly see humanity as a massive larger radio. One of the things they do in astronomy, they talk about using arrays. And arrays are simply where you take a bunch of smaller radio telescopes and you network them together to create a larger one. That's what we are. We're like a giant array. 6 billion plus pieces. And it's focused around the entire planet. So think of the energy as we move this energy inward, and parts of this network come together and create this array, and it gets larger and larger and larger. It makes the process of change that much easier. Therefore, it makes it very important for us to support one another. We need to understand the importance of supporting one another. Having another aid you in what is happening is most important. Other words, educate yourself and educate others. Get people out of their fear as best you can. Be willing to support them. Help them out. Be a mutual support system. This is one of the most important roles in this transition that we can go through, because we are constantly being misinformed, we are constantly being brought into states of denial, and we are constantly being told that what we feel intuitively is right is wrong. So all we have to do is understand that that's all upside down and backwards, and come together and work our ways through all of that, get rid of the fear, center ourselves, tune in, understand ourselves as a giant support system, and begin to help one another. That's when the community aid comes in. If we help in the process of understanding who and what we are, then we have a better chance to understand who and what we are doing. So, be aware of what is occurring, as it does in the next slide. You need to be able to inform and aid your community when first contact begins. So the first thing is understand about contact. Understand about the different scenarios. Understand about the different parts. And what we're going to be going into later is that talking about contact itself and the post-contact environment. So in the initial contact environment, we have to support each other because we're in a state of mutual uncommunications on a mainstream basis. So what we have to do is link together and understand ourselves and our differences. And let's not let our differences and our fears about our differences stop us. Let's go beyond that. The purpose of what we are doing here is to better understand the process of change and consciousness shift. And also to understand that we are not alone. This is most important. A lot of people, when they look at this whole process, look upon it as them against the world and what is going on out there. What we have to say to them is, you are not alone. Great changes are happening. The Galactic Federation is coming, and we need to do certain things in order to ensure that this contact is carried out as we would most likely want it to happen. In other words, the best possible case scenario. That's what the Federation wants. It wants the best case scenario. It wants this change in governments. It wants ours to be abundant. It wants us to be able to freely communicate as sovereign and free beings among one another and understand the process of consciousness in its fullest and most richest terms. And in doing this, we also understand what we've just been talking about, namely that we as a physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional being are shifting. And what are we shifting from? We're shifting from this experiment in Atlantis, which we've talked about in many other lectures, to the fully conscious being, the galactic being, what I also like to call the physical angel. And this is the name they also gave to me long times ago as the terminology. And I think it's a great term, so I use it a lot. So what we have to really understand is that we are becoming physical angels and that this process is inevitable. There's a timetable. What we are doing are basically three things. We're the support system, we're the information system, and we're the anchoring system. And so when we understand that, it becomes pretty clear what's happening in this whole process. Now, a lot of us have all kinds of worries about what's going to happen when all of this stuff comes forward. And people see it. And people are afraid of all kinds of changes. And we're going to be talking about that. Now, the most important thing for us to understand is the thing about helping one another. So let me talk a little bit about starseeds here. Now, first of all, let's talk about what a starseed is. A starseed is a being from another world that have decided to incarnate on this world. Now, why did they come? Why did a large part of us, some people say as many as 20% of the population or more, why didn't we come here? Why did we decide at this particular period in time to arrive and incarnate ourselves on this pain planet, as a lot of other people, including myself, like to call it at the present time? Now, why? Because our role is to be one of the chosen intermediaries between Earth's people and the Galactic Federation of Light. We have come here as kind of an advance force for first contact. And we've come here with a whole bunch of abilities which are normal in other parts of the galaxy. Unfortunately, they're not normal here. And in my case especially, and I know in the case of a lot of other people, this place is pretty confusing. Since I was a little kid, I have looked at Earth in amazement. And even though I've studied its history and become an expert on large aspects of things, I was even have degrees in Southeast Asia and public administration, etc. What we have to understand here is that Earth is really upside down and backwards. It's wonderful that all these magnificent cultures and languages have been created, and also all these different religions, but what we have to understand is that there is one basic energy, love. That energy is in all of us. And that the other thing is that this love energy is interconnected, so that we are all interconnected loving beings. That's our basic who you are. The second thing we have to understand in that is that we have unlimited potential. A full conscious being can do practically anything that's within their life contract and the will that they have set up for each lifetime. So, understand that. Now, with that energy in you, you come to this planet, and all of a sudden, a lot of it is lost. So you're in confusion because things you could do before you couldn't do, and etc. And you have memories of it, and you try to do it and it doesn't happen. Or you do it and it's discouraged. So, as I said before, of all the groups on this planet who I've been asked to anchor in energies, because you are beings who have been connected to your full potential more than other people on this planet and have experienced it sooner than a lot of people on this planet, your prime task is to anchor in the energies provided by heaven that induce change and prepare Earth for first contact. So as I said, you are kind of like this love core advanced group. You've come here to use your love and your energies to help humanity anchor in these great energies and prepare for the arrival of our space and spiritual families. This is a great task. We willingly took it on, not understanding totally the process of what it's like to live on planet Earth. Now, one of the things we will be asked to do is to actually get out in front of people, as I'm doing, and tell your particular community about first contact as it occurs. This is very important. People have to see that it isn't War of the Worlds, it isn't some crazy thing happening, and that everything they're happening to them or seeing or hearing or feeling isn't real, because people have been taught to not trust their feelings from the time they're little kids. So we have to get them back into trusting these feelings, back into trusting their intuition about all of this, and getting back into accepting and loving what's about to happen. So that's really important. And then finally, you have to remember that you have been put through first a lot of the many aches and pains associated with this consciousness shift that we've just been referring to in the first part of this lecture, or this message. So understand that you've already gone through this a lot earlier, and that a lot of the things you're now experiencing are ahead of what other people are experiencing. And this is something that we have to understand. And so we have to lovingly use ourselves as, you might say, proof in the pudding of what's happened, and that you can move through it. So one of the things we have to do is inform people. This is our support system. We're supporting each other. So do that, please. That's important. Once we are able to do this, it becomes possible for us to move through this faster. And that's one of the most important things that we have to do. So what I want to do here, before we get into the post-contact, is talk a little bit more about the process of change. So, what we have to understand is that this planet has gone through periods of great transformation. People who study history of technology and history of thought, philosophy, look at us and see that we have been divided into several periods of change. What is happening now is, for the first time, we are connected to each other. People in China can talk to people in South America. People in North America can talk to people in Africa. People in Australia can talk to people in Europe, etc. And this can be done almost instantaneously. And we're moving more and more with this technology from it not just simply being a voice on a phone or a typing in of technology on a computer, but an actual looking at people. In other words, a vision. So we are becoming people who are electronically talking to other people. So it's important for us to understand that this is part of this acceleration of technology. So the next question would be, what is the next natural level for this technology and history of philosophy to move us towards? All people who study it talk about three basic things. First of all, the concept of accepting consciousness. What does that mean? We are becoming more aware of our relationships to everything. This has brought out the ecology movement. This has brought out the whole concept on our planet about life being interconnected. So we're seeing that we have a duty to our planet, and we're seeing that we have things we have to do to help maintain the ecological systems of the planet. And the third thing that we're seeing is that the previous technologies, which were so-called dirty technologies, the massive industrial technologies of the past 200 years, that they no longer are required, that we are moving into a period that is actually something different. We're moving into what some people call the post-industrial age. And we're also talking about the post-electronic age. What does all that mean? That means that we are moving into the next stage where we become what are being called planetary humanity. So as you look at all of this, what do you start to see? What do you start to look at? You see that the next natural stage in this planet is to become planetary humans who move out into space. We are then becoming ready to become more than planetary humans. We are ready to become galactic humans. Now, we're not quite in the full galactic human stage. But what is happening to us right now is that we are accelerating that through our technology. But also, because of our shifting that we've just been talking about, which was brought about by the electronic age, we are integrating ourselves and raising our awareness. So as you see this, what you then have to understand is our integration, our raising in consciousness, and our need to communicate and be in oneness with one another and being in harmony with one another are a natural process. And this has brought in the next part of our shift, which is to move into the galaxy, as I just explained. So what is happening is, all of this is happening because it's the right time. All of this is happening because it has been created by our societies. Our societies have now reached a point where they have to either vastly shift, or we then run into a major problem, and that problem is that we then have to worry about an extinction. That's why life on this planet is dying at such a rapid rate. We are next if we don't change. It's either right now, shift or die. Those in our planet and in our galaxy who understand that, the inner Earth people as well as those around this entire galaxy, understand that and understand our role. And therefore, they look upon what is happening to us as a natural process for change. And they want us to be successful in this shift. And that's why they are now here. First contact is the completion of the next gigantic shift in our industrial and technology part, and in the aspects of our philosophy. In other words, everything is coming together. We have a mutual philosophy of being able to connect, understand our conscious relationships to one another, and that our technology is just a tool that can allow us to reach our next levels of consciousness. So this is what the whole first part of this lecture has been about, allowing us to prepare for contact. So in the next part, what I want to do is talk about contact itself. So now, let's look at contact itself. If you look at the timeline, the first thing that you see is that in the first week of contact, Galactic Federation personnel want to be able to go forward and just relate to us. We have to get used to the fact that we are not alone. The immensity of this to our psyche cannot be understated. We have been told from the time we are little kids that we are alone in this vast galaxy. Suddenly, we aren't. Oh my God, we aren't. So they want us to understand why we believe this and who they are, and just interact with one another. So they thought the first week of contact should just be that. It became like a orientation party, so to speak. Now, the next phase, which involves the entire first month, is technologies that are required to change this planet and to change our lifestyles had to be introduced. So that's the next phase, which will be the first month. The first step is to get us simply accustomed to Galactic Federation personnel and for them to have an initial time to interact with us. this is very important. One of the most important things that those who have been living among us from the different fleets that are a part of the Galactic Federation First Contact mission have discovered is just how freaky to a lot of people the concept of people from another world is. This is something that amazed them, because to them it's no big deal. They meet people from all over the galaxy all the time. It's no big thing. To them it's going to Earth, or going off to Sirius, or going off to Arcturus, or going to one of the stars in Andromeda is as simple and easy for them as flying to Spain or going cross country in the United States from one coast to the other. It's no big deal. So they want us to get off the big deal, and also they want us to see the vast amount of spectrum color in the skins of all the people on the different worlds that make up humanity in this galaxy. Seeing a brown person that's really brown, and seeing a person who is dark chocolate brown, or is red and really, really red, or is orange or green or purple, they want people to get used to that, or blue or red or whatever. They just want us to get used to that. To see somebody also that's taller than us or shorter. To get used to the whole concept that humanity has decided on a whole package of things to create itself in across the galaxy. Now, as I said, the next month, the first month, is to be devoted to the primary technology transfers. Now, these primary technology transfers are three things. The first one, which is most important probably to households on this planet, are the devices that allow us to make our own clothes, make our own food, have the food prepared as we want, and make our own furniture, and even make our own house. And this can be done very swiftly. All you need is a plan, and it happens. 3 days after the plan is installed in these computers and these special devices, voila, a house, a building, whatever. So if you want to create furniture, think of it, you can get rid of your furniture every day if you want and make new ones. Or new clothes. Or if you wanted to have different kinds of food, you can have it. And then the other part, in this first month, is to begin a major global education program. And this education program is educating us about our true history and our true origins. It is most important that we understand both of these things. Now, after this first month of understanding who they are and this initial technology transfer, the next thing is to tackle the Earth's major problems. So the second month will be involved in the use of various technologies to tackle the Earth's pollution problems and to renew Mother Earth's ecosystems. So let us continue by beginning after the first 2 months of the first contact timeline. Now in the first part we talked about coming together, we talked about bringing in technologies, and we talked about beginning the process of allowing us to fight our pollution and save our ecosystems. Now in the third month, the process now becomes more expanded. That is, we have to begin to devote ourselves to first contact training. What do we mean by that? We need to begin to understand in our own unique way who and what we are as full conscious beings. In other words, our telepathic abilities, our telekinesis abilities, etc. So what we're going to do in the third month is go to school. A fun school. Now to do this fun school, we need volunteers. I'm sure all of you want to raise your hand up and say, I want to volunteer for this. Well, let me tell you, people have already been pre-selected. And we want you, when you get your name called, to say yes. We're going to come forward and we're going to do this. Now, what are we going to do? what we're going to do is learn about all this we've been talking about and more, and do it in a hands-on way. So we'll start first with learning how to talk to one another from great distances using our minds. We'll learn how to use our minds to move things. We'll learn how to look into the future and understand how the process of change operates on a planetary basis and on a galactic basis and on a universal basis. So this is what the training is all about. And it's going to be done in a fun way. They want us to not feel we're in some kind of a prison school and there's people around saying, "Learn!" We don't want that. We want people to understand who and what they are in a loving way. To be in their heart energies. And to say, "Wow, I can do that." That's all this is about. We know you're not going to suddenly zip into your various systems, your Merkaba, whatever, and fly all the way around the world. We don't expect that. What we expect you to do, though, is to just begin. Every person has started out as a baby. They could basically not crawl, learned to crawl, and finally, after bumping up and down a zillion times, falling, began to walk. And then run. So one of the things that we have to understand importantly, very importantly, is to not overdo it. Just let it be. Just do it in joy on your own level. That's the most important thing that they want me to convey to you about all of this. This procedure is about you becoming who you are and the level that you're meant to be able to take it all in. The levels are a lot greater than you may think now you're capable of, but you are. They'll do it in a way that will allow you to understand it. Like when I was a kid, they would put me in front of a device that would basically take you through a whole book in like 2 seconds. And I'm not just talking one of them little magazines, I'm talking them 600-page books. Blam! It's in your mind. That's the technology of our brain, because our eyes scan. Do you realize our eyes scan in nanoseconds across rooms and pick it all up? Billionths of a second. We got it in. It's done. So what we have to understand in learning about this is his capabilities. And they'll teach it to us lovingly. And they'll learn, and we'll learn from this the capabilities of our mind. And as you turn on different aspects of your mind and of your body, it changes your reality. It shifts you. And that's what this is all about. Shifting who you are into who you really are. That's what this is all about. So that's the 3rd month. So think of what we're getting, all this stuff. And we got more. Now, beside this, the Agarthans are coming with the first contact groups, and they want to teach all of us about themselves. Who are they? Why the Agarthans have been, so to speak, down there, and we've been up here. And they want us to understand very deeply how important this reunion is to them. And so the 3rd month, they want to have completed that process, the reunion. They call it the welcoming party of Earth. And then after that, the next thing that they want to do is then invite us down. So, the 4th month, we've gotten our initial full consciousness training. We've learned about all the amazing things we can do. We have all this technology. We're fighting pollution. We're changing our world. We're shifting ourselves. So let's see what this is all about. So the Agarthans want to take us down to inner Earth and teach us about inner Earth. Because once all this is done, and it may take a little bit longer than this, 4 months, which I'm giving you right now, is the advanced full-out plan. It may be that it takes 6 months, and we have to slow it down, and that's what the first week and the first month are all about. We interact we communicate, we feel each other out, we understand the energies of what's happening, and we begin to see that we're in all of this together. And they begin to be able to then figure out the best way to finish this process off, and to help us to better comprehend who we are, where we've been, and where we're going, and what we're capable of. That's really what this is all about. And the fitting part of this is our stewardship of the earth. So as we understand all of this and as we evolve, it's time for planet Earth to evolve. So what is happening? Earth will be changing. There'll be weather changes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what we are doing is we are bringing in change on the planet. The Earth right now has around it huge brown clouds caused by the fact that parts of the Earth that weren't developed industrially before are now developing. Plus there's these huge clouds of pollution around the Earth caused by the initial industrialization. So we have all this fuzzy stuff, and what has it done? It's created what is called now earth dimming. What earth dimming is doing is slowing down slightly the process of pollution. So what happens is, if you were to just remove the parts of the pollution and not solve the problem of the atmosphere, we would get massive global warming. It would be like somebody said, oh, you took the smoky glass off, and now I can turn the temperature up all the way. So what we have to do, and that's why it's being done this way, we have to not only rectify the pollution, we have to change the atmosphere back. We have to intermix it in ways that allows it to return to a period of normalcy where there were layers, each layer worked in its proper way. Because this is the next stage of preparing Earth for becoming its own fully conscious self. So we're showing our love for our planet, and we're showing our love for ourselves, because remember, we're all connected together. So, one of the most important things to remember here is that pollution is a two-way street here. It's not just about getting rid of it all, it's about rectifying the change caused by the pollution. Because if we don't rectify that, just getting rid of it can cause something even worse. So for this reason, it is essential that we do both aspects. And that's very, very important, that we understand both aspects. And that's what we're going to be taught about. Earth is a living entity. It has things going on in it. It's just like a dog or a cow or a baby or a human or yourself with something sick. The sickness, you can get rid of the thing that causes the sickness, but if you don't take care of the symptoms the sickness creates, it can get worse. So it's important that we understand that and how to relate to that. And this is the so-called integrative thinking of higher consciousness that we will better understand. So before we go down into inner Earth, we will then look at the entire process of who and what we are. Now that we've talked about living in it, let's look at the roles we will play in this procedure. So now, first of all, your role in reality. Now, before contact actually occurs, we'll have monetary prosperity. And this will end the need for joyless labor. Why? If you don't like the job that you're in, you don't need to be in that job you're in, because you can do whatever you want in terms of monetary capabilities. Your role is to do things that bring you joy. Joy is very important in all of this. Joy affects your heart and your soul. Joy is what makes you vital. Joy is what makes you happy. Joy is what makes you a successful, interactive, living, spiritual being. So, this role of joy is very important. Now, as you move from a society in which jobs are based upon survival into which jobs are based on joy, it is necessary for people who understand this to be focal points in their communities, to bring their community together and help the Galactic Federation to understand and help the Galactic Federation to educate us in shifting from this joyless labor society, the survival society, into a society that is one of joy and fulfillment, and also of solving all our problems. Because if you use your full potential together as interconnected beings, you can do anything. Now, as this all happens, and you take your talents and abilities into your community, you will begin to see that the abilities and talents in your community are like yours, and therefore you have this vast pool of talent. So what the thing has to happen then is to create a new way of looking at how society is put together. That's what this is about. And so one of the things that the Galactic Federation wants to do is teach us about what they like to call fluid group management, and various other things that are part of this process of allowing us to operate as our fully conscious, highly potentialized selves. This is very important. It's a society in which leaders happen because of their abilities, in which they're supported by a society, in which the free, sovereign beings who are a part of that society utilize their own talents and abilities to aid the one chosen to lead the project, so that that project can then successfully bring the society through any potential problems and then successfully move it forward as a solved problem that then becomes a strength. Now, this is very important because that's the basis of what I've been talking about called Galactic Society. The basis of Galactic Society are fully potentialized beings with their own talents and abilities fully understood, who utilize them freely to interact with one another and create a society that works. It allows every human being in that society to be honored, to be respected, and to be successful. That is extremely important. That's why the Galactic Federation wants us to understand, in this post-contact world, wants us to understand why this world can work in this new way and how it can. That how it can is very important. Not only to us, but to the entire Federation involved in First Contact. They want us to succeed deeply. They want us to feel that we are part of a great movement to create a new Earth, a new solar system, and allow this wonderful planet to realize its own fully potentialized self. And in this new potentialized reality of planet, solar system, and our new galactic society, we can then use this as a springboard into the universe to do our part in unfolding the beautiful divine plan that is part of how physicality is to be. That is our most important aspect. Now, what will happen to us? One of the most important things, as anyone who looks at it can see, is that change will alter beliefs. It will alter our outlook on jobs, and it will also change our cultural ambience and our cultural ease. This is very important. So you need to provide support for the Galactic Federation's psychological and sociological teams. Their job, as they see it, their task, is to lovingly look at our beliefs and help us understand change. Fear of change is something that we all have. Their task is to help us through it, and to do so in a loving way. And not only will we have the Galactic Federation, but the Ascended Masters will be here to help with the concepts of our beliefs, the concepts of our culture, and how these can be amalgamated and altered in ways that allows for this love and full potentialized being to create a new society. This new society being the Galactic Society. Now to do this, we will provide, that is the Galactic Federation, new technologies. And these technologies need you to be trained. So educational and personal support for your community, as well as those things needed for each of you to become focal points in your community, to fully potentialize yourself. What we are doing is taking people, a lot of people, with not the proper self-confidence, with improper ways of looking at themselves, and energizing them, and allowing them to see just what amazing beings they really are, and that they are not alone. The way to do this is in a loving way that also allows people to see inside themselves and to change and shift. Now, for everybody who's worried about what this means to the planet, fear not. All the things that are necessary for this change to happen as smoothly as possible is what the Galactic Federation teams have been working on for a long time, for years and years and years, almost a decade and a half of planning. Now, all that planning has allowed them to see basic aspects of how we are. Dossiers have been put out on all of us. They've looked at us. They've decided what is the best way to approach each one of us and the best way to help us to change for the better. This process is what they want to do. But they also know that as we change, we need to help one another. We need a support system that not only is a bunch of people from another world telling us how to do it, but people who have done it, telling us and explaining to us how they've done it and encouraging us to do likewise, and supporting us through both our mistakes and our successes. This is very important. The key they want to explain to us with the group dynamics that they understand is for us to understand about love and what it is, and to realize that love is the key, and that everything involved in this new energy is about love. And once you understand that, and you feel that energy, and you can communicate it to others, you begin to see and feel a whole new reality. That's where they want us to go. That's what the post-contact reality is all about. So, as I've said, they want people who are starseeds to be vanguards. They want people who begin to become more aware and wake up to understand this process as they grow and be able to move forward and connect with one another. So they want people to be nodal points, anchor points, trainers, support systems for everybody else. We all get to play the same game because this game is the game of life. It's the game of growth. It's the game of consciousness. And it's very important that we understand all of that. Now, another aspect of this role is for those, is that since the nation state is to disappear, your role is to help in this transition to an interdependent world, which is a word that I made up in First Contact, to mean a world that's beyond interdependent, it's interconnected. And the word they thought would work and that I liked was independent. So I just made it up in the book because that's what we all agreed on. Now, as I've said, the Galactic Federation teams are here to rehabilitate those who are either in prisons or in mental institutions. The process is for all of us to understand who and what we are. And as we realize our inner joys, and as we potentialize ourselves, and as we become who we are capable of being, suddenly the hatreds, the mental challenges and all that stuff can be overcome because we are creating the energies of our full potentialized selves. And that's very important. So what we are having here is once again support. Now, as part of that support role, as I just said, the Garthans want, or the Inner Earth people, want to bring parts of groups who are picked to study in the Crystal Cities. They want people to go down there for a short period of time and learn. How does these things work? What is a galactic society like? People will say, I've seen it, I know we can do it, and I even participated in it. And I saw how it works. And this is how it works. So that's what they want. As you come back, you become part of a larger support team for your communities, for your region, for your globe, to bring this planet forward as fast as possible. So that we're all together. We're all in this together. And that's a very important part of this whole procedure, is that we do everything together. The next part deals with people who are involved in science and technology. Now, you're going to be trained in how to maintain and operate the new technology. Your task will then be a new joy. A lot of people who are involved in science are totally involved in science. It's their lives. A lot of people involved in technology really get off on what the technology does and that they're a part of making it happen. So what we want to do is make you even more involved. Give you a sense of science, of a scientific paradigm, and of a new technology based upon consciousness, an interaction between you and the device. So the device becomes a living thing that interacts with you just as you would interact with another person. And then learning how you work in the process of making it possible through your own diagnostic abilities to make that system maintain itself at its maximum efficiency. So it loves you for what you are doing and wants you to succeed, and you love it by showing back to it that you want it to also succeed in what it's set forward to do. Now, because of all the boundaries, the religious and cultural boundaries set up by people, we then have to set up, and this is what the Ascendant Masters want to basically do, is set up a vast retraining program that will blur all this previous stuff and allow you to see through it and understand your unity with one another. It's very important that people understand the process of change and also understand how this relates to technology, to culture, to religions, to language, to everything involved with what we might call our lifestyle, or what makes the life environment around us operate. So, as you can see, many of you are to assist the Galactic Federation in presenting to others how fluid group dynamics really operates, present to people how the technology can work, and interact with one another to create a massive new network of beingness. And this beingness is the rising consciousness. And as you move up in this consciousness, you will see how this all connects not only to what physicality is, but to what heaven is, to the spiritual aspects of who and what you are, and how you are related to everything involved in that, and to discover the aspects of who you are at every level, from physicality to the highest spiritual levels up to the Creator, and how you are blending this energy together to create who you are. That's really the most important thing, is for people to help themselves to understand and help others to understand what is going on. And just to use a simple phrase, learn to get it and understand what that means and how you can utilize it and make the world a better place. Now, next one. Now, as the next title says, we're going to be ending the fear and spreading the joy. First contact is the moment when the fear of the last 13 millennium is transformed into a great joy. When love and the fulfillment of what you love, your joy, becomes what you are and how you express yourselves to others and how you interact with others. This joy marks the end of a reality that has manipulated your emotions and used twisted half-truths to control you. The time has come to change that. So one of the things that the post-first contact world is based on is truth. And a world in which manipulation is over. You become who you are, and because you are in joy and love and caring about one another, you interact. Why? Because it's important to you. It's vitally important to you. And so as you do this, it brings you further and further up in awareness. You might say you're ascending with each act of love and interaction. And as this happens, it then leads to a joy, which can mark the start of a new reality in which your natural sovereignty is returned to you. Everybody learns to respect and care for who and what you really are. That is vitally important to the Galactic Federation, because every person in a galactic society, in the Galactic Federation, understands that as a given and looks upon our present society in awe and wonder. And awe in how can such a society exist, and a wonder in how has it sustained itself. So they would prefer that we get into our love, we get into our interconnection, and we begin to learn the simple procedures that allow us to move beyond the cultural and physical nuances that have limited us and kept us apart so that we could be manipulated. The future is about the ending of manipulation, the ending of control, and the expression in each and every one of us of our sovereignty and the joy of our freedom. This is vital, and this is a key point. And that's why it is so essential that post-contact be looked upon not as something with fear, but as a great, incredible, joyous, and glorious place that we are destined to be a part of. That is so important for each and every one of us to just understand, not just from our heads, but from our hearts. When our heart energy begins the procedure of understanding and talking to us, then the Federation feels they have gotten us to a point where we can indeed become fully conscious, sovereign, and free beings living in a society that expresses all of that. And that's all that our future is about. That's all that this great shift, all these aches, all these pains, all this worry, all this fear that we are creating in ourselves is about. It's how we get out of it, namely no more fear, and understanding fear, and understanding it all. Because fear is just false emotions that feel like we're real, that we feel that they are real, and they aren't. They're false. So fear is not something important to us. Fear is something that happens as part of an attempt to control us. So we're talking about a world in which fear is not there, in which we have complete and utter self-centered love. And this centeredness is not by ourself. By self-centered I mean self meaning the planet. It's centered in our planet, in our inner care for each other and for ourselves. We understand who we are, we understand who other people are, and we see how they link together. And this linking is vital. So as we begin to understand all of that, and as we begin the process of this creating of network, which we've already done, by the way. In the first half, we talked about how people are using the technology, such as the internet, etc., to create the truth, to bring us into a point of talking about what we see and feel around us, of the changes, of the pains, of the aches, of all the different things that make us who we are. And that most importantly, we are using all of this to create a change, not only in ourselves, but in our reality. So, this is indeed a mission possible, done under the auspices of heaven and the sacred dispensations of Lord Soraya, one of the three aspects of a creator. Your primary task is to use your inherent talents to anchor in this new reality and spread a global wide joy to all. The moment draws near for the completion of first contact and the creation of a joyous new future for Earth's humanity. What we are doing right now and what we will be doing are part of a process that allows each and every one of us to create this new reality and make it possible for all of us to understand better who and what we are, our capabilities, and how that relates to one another, and most importantly, how we give back all this love in our societies to our great host, Mother Earth, and to all the other great hosts in the solar system and the entire galaxy and all the galaxies that create the universe. That's what this is all about. Understanding in consciousness is this awareness, this great awareness of self based upon love and spreading that to others. That is the most important thing that we have to do. And so I would like to just close this lecture today by just simply looking at what we're doing as a process of change. And I hope that during the course of this message, I've helped people to understand a lot more of what is happening here and why this planet is shifting, how it's affecting us, and how the Galactic Federation and the Ascended Masters with First Contact will work through the process of getting us from the society we now live in to the society that we are meant to live in. So I would like to close this message with simply another brief prayer. I would simply ask the Supreme Creative Force to come and bring all the energies brought forth in this lecture on all the many levels and spread it to everyone who hears this, sees this, and feels this, so that they can use whatever is necessary to help create and make possible this new reality. So be it.
Why is this mission possible?
This mission is possible because humanity is shifting at a tremendous rate right now. Our planet is witnessing the greatest coming together in its history. This shift is only the beginning. We have discovered that there are vast movements against war, vast movements for sociological change, vast movements for cultural interdependence, vast movements in this world for working out problems between people. So there is now a connection happening of unprecedented proportions on a global basis. And the same thing is with ecology and with the whole question of global warming. And this involves not only governments, but on the people level. We have seen the greatest people-to-people ambassadorial exchanges in the history of this planet in the last decade, and especially even in the last half decade. So is this planet shifting? Yes. Is this planet moving forward? Yes. Is this mission possible? Of course. And so I would like to thank you all and simply say Salamat Ja and Zazuma, which simply means blessings and thank you.